Good evening, ladies and gents, and welcome to another Live and Leash programme. Delighted to be joined by one of my co-hosts this evening, Trudy Carmody. How are you, Trudy?
I'm good, John. Good to be here.
Yes, good. And delighted to be joined by Julian Nagy. Julian, we have you in because of a post you put up during the week. Can you tell our viewers more about the post you put up and why you put it up?
Thank you, John. Thank you again. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. So, Bus Éireann has for many years now operated the X12 bus route. That it's an expressway bus route that runs between Limerick and Dublin, and on the way it stops in Roscrea, Nina, Portlaoise, and then continues straight to Dublin. It's very well used by commuters going to work, by the elderly going to their hospital appointments, by many students who use it to get to to go to their studies in Dublin, or to get off in the city centre and catch a connecting train, say to Dundalk or Maynooth or wherever. And Bus Éireann has announced that as of the 29th of January, they will just terminate the bus route. And it's they've cited that it's a commercial route that is unprofitable, but I just don't see it. I've used the bus route many times. It's always been full before the pandemic. If you look at on Twitter, Bus Éireann posts tweets whenever a bus is full, just to let people know that they won't be able to take any more people on in the next stops. If you look at all their mentions of the X12 bus, it was full the whole time until September, when they stopped publishing those tweets about the X12 route any longer. And as someone who lives close to one of the bus stops, that bus was still full. It just, for obvious reasons, because they wanted to cut it, they stopped putting up evidence that it is well used. And whatever the problem is with it, it's on a managerial level. The bus drivers are great. It's a good bus route. Everyone uses it. And it's just so disappointing.
Yeah, it's so disappointing. I mean, in a former life, I used to look after university students down both in UL, in Limerick, and up in DCU in Dublin. So I was on that route, used that bus route a lot. I don't drive, so I'm a great user of public transport. Great route, and as you mentioned before, really friendly bus drivers. I know quite a few of them, and when they're moved on to different routes, you'd miss them. You'd have a great old chat. Obviously, this is pre-COVID. Fewer chats to be had at the moment, but. Julian, are you saying that the tweets about services being full, do you feel that was a deliberate move to stop putting out that information, because clearly that information would indicate that not only was the route popular, but it was making money and washing its own face in commercial terms?
Well, I don't really know why they stopped, the exact reasoning, but the fact of the matter is that bus was still full, and Bus Éireann was tweeting when other bus routes that they aren't planning on cutting at the moment were full. So I think there's a wider problem with their route in terms of the way it's managed centrally. But I certainly improvements in the service would have been much better. I remember previously. And there was no improvements. I remember previously seeing an article on, I could have been Laois People. It certainly was one of the Laois news agencies, that residents on the Mountrat Road, where the X12 bus passes through anyways, were looking for a bus stop, because they had to trek all the way. Say if they want to get to Limerick, they had to trek all the way from the Mountrat Road, exit onto the motorway in the Limerick direction, all the way into town, only to get a bus route that would then drive straight past their home. And they made a representation. It was never taken on board. And then, even if you take the argument, which I don't believe in, that the bus route wasn't making money, or that there wasn't enough people using it, there was no attempt at all to improve it, to actually make it popular, to make it work.
Yeah.
So, Julian, are you saying that an otherwise popular full bus is now being they're citing that it's unprofitable and that they're not making money, but also you're saying that the tweets stopped saying this was full, and they didn't stop for other bus routes.
Yep, that's all correct.
It doesn't make sense. So if every day that bus is full, and I've been on it myself, and I would agree, I've been on a full bus on all occasions, and would have lived on the Mount Rath Road and had to track. But why it doesn't? None of what you're saying makes sense. If it is profitable, if it is full, why would you stop it? Like, what kind of agenda can we speculate on? Are we going to have the route privatized completely? It doesn't make sense. And if they were tweeting about the other bus routes from September on, why did they stop tweeting about the people that were on the bus? And as you said, you've been on it since September, and it is still full. So it'll cause a huge problem in Portlaoise and surrounding areas, particularly for students who, due to student loans and what have you, don't have the money to drive to Dublin to go to college, and especially for young men where the insurance costs of driving are astronomical. The only viable alternative is the bus, really. So I fail to understand why. And I thought, is bus, Aaron, are they not supposed to, like, some routes are necessary and not profitable, so it shouldn't matter because it is a necessary public service, because some routes will be not profitable by their nature, and then other routes will be so profitable they will overcompensate.
Yes, there is a mechanism there called the public service obligation.
Yes.
When there was, I remember an issue a couple of years ago of a similar bus route that also runs on the old N7 towards Dublin from Bus Éireann, when they wanted to cut that. No, on the there was a public service obligation won by the local people, by the local TDs and councillors lobbying, and that's what I feel we need to do. We and I feel that it's especially wrong that they're doing it during the pandemic when people legitimately, I think now that it's level 5, I don't think it's full anymore. I don't think any bus route in the country is full anymore. But now the people, people might notice when it's gone until the lockdown ends and it's too late.
It's funny, isn't it? Things like this are always done when the people who are doing them feel that everyone's back is turned, and they try and do things when no one's looking, really sly. And people may not even notice this is happening unless, like yourself, like, fair play bringing this to everyone's attention by your post and now here today, because you're right, something needs to be done, and county councillors, local politicians, and maybe a petition of some description could be the way forward. If that bus is full, then there's a lot of signatures you could get on a petition, and that could be easily done over the next 9-10 days.
Of course. And I definitely think this is something that it's not just, I suppose, if you'd seen my Facebook post, I don't think this is just about the bus route. I think it's about around the question of Portlaoise I don't think there's been a town, or indeed in terms of Laois, a county that has been so mistreated in terms of funding. We don't have we don't have our student. If you're a student living in Laois, if you're a young person like me living in Laois, you have two choices. Either you go to another county, you have to go trek all the way to another county to access your human right to higher education, or you just don't get it. It's a huge privilege for people. It's a privilege issue. We don't have a lot of jobs. We have a lot of people commuting.
So you're saying, like, there's objects being put in your way to further your education and for your life and your career, just by the sheer fact that you live in Laois.
Absolutely, the fact that that there's people. I went to university in Maynooth. I'm graduate now. I'm working as a student officer. You can just see the difference in terms of the privilege of people who live from the likes of Maynooth or just around the corner in Leixlip or Kilcock or Selbridge. People who are able to walk out their family home and within 15 minutes be in a university.
Yeah, like even when you take our nearest university, Carlow, into consideration, there isn't a bus leaving Laois that gets you to college on time in Carlow. There's no consideration. There's no, you're not looking for a leg up. You're not looking for anything free. It's just, please stop putting obstacles in my way. You don't need life to be made difficult or more difficult than it should be. Like, you should be able to get to Carlow on time. You should be able to get a bus to Dublin to get to college. And yeah, you're right. It'd be lovely if there was a college closer to Laois. I mean, we have the population. Are we not one of the fastest growing, in particular, Portlaoise, wasn't it the fastest growing town
Yes.
in the country? So, like, why isn't it getting the most amount of money?
But for the viewers, you make very, very good points, Julian. For the viewers, like, what is your commute by public transport to Maynooth from Portlaoise like? What's involved?
At the moment, well, to Maynooth, now there is a couple of options. There is, but the dedicated JJ Kavanagh's bus costs, it's either 50 or 60 euro per week return. It runs 2 hours because it doesn't actually, it won't go the route you'd expect it to go. It goes Portlaoise, Mountra, Portarlington, Monasterevin, Kildare, Newbridge, sometimes Naas, then Clane, and only then does it actually head straight into Maynooth. So there are people, well, not anymore probably, but just at the moment, there isn't many things happening on campus in Maynooth. But there were people for many years who had to get to outside to the inner relief road, the JFL Avenue, by 6:50 in the morning to catch their bus to get to Maynooth at 9. And then they had to stay in Maynooth, even if they only had 1 hour's lecture until 1 p.m. or then again after to 6 p.m.
Wow.
And, I suppose there is a bit bigger philosophical point here of, 105 years ago, we had the Easter Rising, and, the founders of our independence said that Ireland should cherish all her children equally. I don't think anyone in Laois, when they go and meet people who literally are walking distance from a university, whose 24/7 A&E isn't under threat, I don't feel cherished equally. I don't think anyone in Laois is.
Well,
and with the, sir?
Yeah, no, Julian, you make very, very valid points. We seem to be down at the bottom of the list of priorities, even compared to some neighbouring counties. And we need, what I loved about your post when you put it up, Julian, you have all the phone numbers of our TDs. So we need to, and thanks for bringing this to our attention, because obviously commuters are not commuting in the same numbers at the moment due to the pandemic. They mightn't be aware of it. So hopefully through your post, this podcast, and obviously the post we'll be putting up on our channels now for the next 10 days, hopefully we'll raise awareness of this issue. But it shouldn't come to this. It shouldn't come to this. And again, unfortunately, Bus Éireann have a track record of doing things that really don't stack up. If you remember, the Dublin-Cork route used to stop in Portlaoise, and now you have to get an M&A coaches service from Portlaoise to Cashel if you want to connect with that Bus Éireann service that's going on to Cork. It really is baffling how they operate, and even going back to the X12 route, and the times of the buses. The last X12 bus you can get from Portlaoise to Dublin in that direction, for example, is just after 7 o'clock in the evening, none later. It could be better run. I'd say
you need to make the routes. You need to make the routes attractive. If I'm working somewhere or going to college somewhere, I need to be able to get there on time, not 2 hours early, not 1 hour late. I need to be able to have transport when I'm coming home. Now, office-school hours, even if you looked at it from a 9 to 5 point of view, surely to God, you would plan your business around 100 people will be leaving Laois - Portlaois to be in Dublin. I'm making this really simple. To be in Dublin for 9 o'clock. Therefore, we must leave Portlaois at 7:30. Those 100 people will be returning at the end of the day at 5 o'clock. So why isn't there, or they'll be finishing work at 5 o'clock. So a bus leaving Dublin at 5:15, returning back here for about 6:30, 6:45. That's a plan. And it took me 10 seconds to come up with that viable, feasible, logical plan. So I'm failing to understand why you plan badly to prove that it's not viable. Do you not like your job, Mr. Bus Person Owner? Do you not want to put buses on that clearly have a line of people waiting to get on? And the thing is, I'm as you know, John, and because last week's podcast, I'm very environmentally aware. And I would, my house is very environmental. We recycle everything. I do all that I possibly can for the environment, but I cannot leave my car behind if I want to go to Cork or Dublin. I just can't, because there is no viable, feasible alternative. And if there was, I would leave the car behind.
Yes.
So for the environment, it would make sense. Put 50 people on a bus, or put Trudy in her car on her own, possibly, because most cars, I know there was a couple of surveys done over the years proving that a really high percentage of cars sitting on the M7 were sitting in cars alone.
Yes.
So for every 50 cars, I could have one bus if they ran properly.
If they ran properly, but it's not only the buses being not run properly, like the train service. Like last year, Julian, we flagged, for example, the Ballybrophy to Limerick train service, and it's just the times do not suit university students. Like, we have a lot of university students from this general area going to the various colleges in Limerick. Like, with the train service there, you can't get to a 9 o'clock lecture, you can't get to 10 o'clock lecture, you can't get to 11 o'clock lecture. So you're going, the same if somebody is living here but operates a business or a shop in Limerick City, they can't get in to open up on time using public transport. It just, I'll bring it back
to what I said, know your customer, which is the essence of. If you knew your customer, if you did your proper research, that train would be full. Those buses are full. But they could be fuller, or you could put more routes on the buses. You could, if you ran the train the few minutes earlier or later in the evening coming back, they would fill. There are people just waiting to be given an alternative.
Yes. Yeah. And are you a driver yourself? Do you have a car, Julian?
I don't. I've been lucky enough to get by so far. Public transport, just for, I suppose, environmental reasons and so on. I hope that I will be given the opportunity to live a viable life without driving a car. I'm happy to be, if it's the case, as is in many countries with proper public transport in the cities, that most people there don't actually own a car. There's just car rental services, like on an app where, you probably need, you're going somewhere to a nature reserve for 3 hours on a weekend. You're going to rent a car for 3 hours and you're going to pay for those 3 hours. You're not going to pay for it to be sitting
in front of your house.
Yeah, in front of your house for the other 6 days and 21 hours.
Yeah.
But we're not given that opportunity.
To ask the question, Julian, how the hell, or how on God's earth, Maynooth is a very awkward college to get to. How on God's earth are you going to travel post February 1st?
Well, I'll have to take the train. I don't live close. I live just in one of the last estates, like the furthest from the train station in the town. I could have gotten the X12 from the hospital, or sometimes the driver's very sound. He'll drop you off at Kilminchie. That depends on the driver more so than anything else.
And do they go near Maynooth College?
Well, you have to get off at Houston Station and then catch one of the Bus Éireann buses or the Dublin buses that go to.
So we're doing a boomerang.
You'll do a boomerang, yeah.
See, that's ridiculous.
You're doing
You
an
can
Irish.
take the
You're
green
doing
bus.
an Irish donut, lads. An Irish donut.
You do. You can
That's
also
ridiculous.
take. You can also take the green bus to Naas, and from Naas there's a bus that runs to Maynooth. But the green bus arrives there exactly 2 minutes after the bus that goes through Sounds to Maynooth has departed.
Wow.
So you have to either come in 57 minutes early and hang around Naas Main Street, or if the bus.
And you're not talking about hanging around Main Street in Naas on a lovely sunny day. You're talking about hanging around Main Street Naas at 7 a.m., probably in the lashings of rain and the cold, dark winter morning. That's not easy.
Not easy. No, it's not easy.
And then come the evening, you're hanging around Main Street Naas alone in the dark for however long as well. And there's enough, the thing is, there are enough people not to have to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, but of course, that example that you've just given us, Julian, begs the question: how does the bus operator get his or her license to operate when you have glaring anomalies in the timetabling like that? It just doesn't make sense.
Well, I can tell you one thing. I suppose just to start off, I to declare a conflict of interest, if you want to put it. I am a member of Fine Gael, but I'm not speaking as a member of Fine Gael here. When the Greens got into government here, I was kind of happy in a way because I thought Eamon Ryan is the Minister for Transport now. Surely public transport is going to improve. I never thought that in the middle of what they are, what climate crisis, we've declared a climate crisis. It's in their party policy for climate crisis. I never thought that he would be cutting bus routes. But the Bus Éireann is his responsibility. Even Shane Ross didn't try to close down that road. Even Shane Ross.
Yes.
And now,
I know. It's staggering.
I suppose the special pressure on this should be on Minister Pippa Hackett. She claims to be a representative. She's a senator for the Laois and Offaly. She is an Offaly woman, but she claims to represent Laois as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see how she could possibly continue in government that has, under the leadership of a man who has cut the only expressway bus route from Bus Éireann from one of the two counties that she represents.
Yes.
If she should use, she sits on cabinet. She should use her influence on cabinet to fight for the most vulnerable, those who cannot afford a car. It's basic social justice.
Absolutely, absolutely, and of course we're going to give all the politicians you mentioned their right of reply. So we'll be emailing and phoning tomorrow, and seeing what the response is, because it does show up the fact that you have the Green Party in government, and this is happening, even though they claim, and it is a claim, that they're all for public transport. The reality and the rhetoric don't match up, sadly.
So I'd just like to note that there has been no bus route cuts to any of the Wicklow services that serve Eamon Ryan's area. There was no cuts there. Just like to clarify.
Well spotted again, Julian. Well spotted. We're going to follow up with you, Julian. Hopefully we're going to have good news from the various politicians that we'll contact first thing in the morning. We're going to let our viewers know exactly how those conversations went. I just still do not understand it. You have the fastest growing town in the Republic of Ireland, and they're taking away a public transport route, essentially. It just doesn't add up. It really
I
doesn't.
think they have an ethical and a moral duty to do something about this.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Very
So
well put.
exactly. So Julian, thanks for coming in this evening, albeit remotely, and congratulations on your new posts in Maynooth University. Delighted to be joined by my co-host Hannah Cahill. Hannah, how are you?
I'm great. I'm doing great. How are you?
Brilliant, brilliant. I'm great. I'm great. In good form today. Delighted to be joined by Monsignor John Byrne and Dr. Tom Nelligan. Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
Thank you for having me on.
Delighted to have you on.
Doing good and glad to be here.
Yeah, delighted to have you on, Monsignor. And Monsignor, we'll start with you. Okay, we'll start with you because obviously you're the most senior person in the room. I'll just say born in 1951, Monsignor, ordained in 1974. Is this the worst period you've gone through as a priest?
I think I could say probably. Yeah, I mean, there have been ups and downs, and it depends on what you're gauging worst periods through, I suppose. But certainly in my 70 years, this is the worst period the country has gone through for an extended period. It's something that I could never have thought about. It's something we could never have foreseen. It's something, if we were told about even 12 months ago, we would think that somebody was writing serious science fiction, that a bug that began in Wuhan, a city of 11 million that we didn't know existed in China, and suddenly not only, like, the whole world is in this state of lockdown, and it has had extraordinary consequences, particularly for families who have been bereaved, and extraordinary consequences for economies all over the world. So it has really, yes, I think I could say it has been maybe the worst time. There have been lots of bad times, there have been lots of good times. But yes, probably on balance, this is the worst long period of time I have experienced in my life.
In your life, and like looking at Portlaoise Parish, I was just looking there at the facts and figures. In the last census, you have a parish of approximately 26,000 people, and of those, almost 80% would designate themselves as Roman Catholics. And then you would have 6,000 to 7,000. You would have had 6,000 to 7,000 attending mass every week at the nine masses.
Yes.
In the parish.
Yeah.
And that's all gone.
Yes, I mean, it just has been an extraordinary upheaval for us. We were coasting along nicely. I mean, the church has been through a very difficult period, and we're no exception. And we had lots of challenges, but we were blessed to be in a parish. I had great colleagues, and we had lots of very supportive people, and we could actually cocoon, to use that word, cocoon ourselves from maybe the broader reality, because we had a very lively, good, supportive parish, which we still have, but in a very, very different way at this time,
Yeah, and I'm just looking, because I was doing a bit of research on the parish and the work you put in. Obviously, you had the masses in the various churches and in the school in Knockmay. You're also chaplains, you and your colleagues, you're also chaplains to Midland Regional Hospital here in Portlaoise.
Yeah.
Like how does that continue, or does it continue during COVID-19?
Well, we effectively are locked down the same as everybody else. Now, we have a very lively parish centre, and we have a very good parish staff, and they are doing a mixture of working from home and present but it's just entirely different, Our chaplaincy work to the hospital has been seriously curtailed. We don't have the freedom that we had to visit the hospital on a daily basis and ramble around, if you like, and inquire, is there anybody who wanted to meet with us? We had a very good relationship with nursing and staff and reception staff. So, and we had a great freedom and access to the hospital. Of course, that's all radically changed now. We we go now when we are invited or asked to go, and there's a lot of procedure around protective gear and all of that. And visits to the hospital, and I was in the ICU last week, and I mean, it just is a stark reality. It's like being in a war zone, and you're looking at all of these people. I'm in this gear, like dressed up like a spaceman for
Yes.
15 minutes while I attend to a few very sick people. And I'm looking at nurses and doctors and other staff who are in this gear all day.
All day.
And I mean, my admiration for them knows no bounds. How hard they're working, the difficult conditions they're working under, the emotional difficulty of dealing with people who are so sick, the knowledge that they are the only human contact basically with many of these people. Their families can't come in and hold their hands. So I mean, I really my admiration, as I said, for them knows no bounds. Wonderful people doing a wonderful job. And a few hundred yards away from where I'm sitting now, that's happening in our hospital. Heroic sacrifices by the staff and very sick people whom they will help, many of them, thank God, to walk out of that hospital.
Yes, you've put it into stark perspective. The level of sacrifice and self-sacrifice our frontline workers are putting in on a daily basis.
And they're tired.
And again, I noticed you gave a wonderful interview there to RTE News and to Midlands Radio 3 about the current funeral regulations.
Yes.
Can you expand? Can you explain your thinking on that to our viewers?
Anything I would say about this is against the background of what I've just said.
Yes.
We really need to take this virus seriously. We really owe it to our frontline workers to obey the rules and restrictions and to be extremely careful ourselves, to mind ourselves and to mind each other. So anything I would say is in that regard. But I do find an arbitrary rule of 10 family members allowed to attend a funeral as just being a bit arbitrary and maybe without any great scientific or medical background to that decision. And it's not a question of the churches being big buildings that could accommodate 200 people. That's not really what we're talking about, because we all know the restrictions are about trying to get people to stay at home, not to be gathering in groups. But when you have somebody who has died, and perhaps of COVID, perhaps not, but anybody who is in a nursing home or in a hospital at the moment where most of the deaths take place, it's very difficult for families. They don't have freedom to access them. They're not able to hold their hand. They've been through a very difficult period. Then they have lost their loved one. And suddenly now this man will say has 5 children, not unknown in our circumstances, and he has 10 grandchildren, and he has 3 brothers and 3 sisters.
Yes.
And somebody says 10 can come into the church. Like, yes. Who decides? And who was supposed to say, no, sorry, I know you're a brother, I know you're a sister, but you can't come in. The damage that can be doing, but even the emotional damage that is doing to people. Like, I think I would love to see it change, not to a particular figure, but to direct family members. And we can define direct family members, parents, spouse, partner, siblings, children, grandchildren. And for most of us, that might account for 25 people,
Yes.
And most churches can accommodate that number in safety. And a lot of them are hubs, they're family bubbles anyway. And and the 10 is very arbitrary, and it's so difficult. It's compounding a difficult situation, I would feel, maybe unnecessarily. There isn't, I've spoken to doctors and scientists, people with a scientific background in relation to this, and they would agree that there is no great medical or scientific reason to say 10, that if you can accommodate 25 of the one family, extended family, like I would feel it's a more humane way of doing it. I know of situations where it has caused enormous grief because a widow was the one who was expected to decide who comes in, who doesn't come in.
Oh no.
So siblings of her dead husband, whom she loved,
Yeah.
she was the one who said, "No, sorry, it's grandchildren over siblings," and the damage that's going to cause in the future.
Yeah.
Good. We're in a difficult situation, and I wouldn't want to recommend anything that would compromise health and safety. I wouldn't want to recommend anything that would advance the progress of this virus and put our hospitals under further pressure. But I do think that a ruling on direct family would not cause any spike in the virus.
I know it's amazing, Monsignor. When you brought this topic up, I got thinking. I got emotional about this myself because I'm the eldest of 7. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, Mum and Dad are still with us.
Yes.
14 grandchildren.
Yes.
And you do get upset even thinking about it.
You put it into context and you say, what would happen if? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, people don't like thinking about it. But it really brings it home, Monsignor. It really does.
Yeah.
It really does. I'd love and I'm delighted to say we're joined by our other co-host, Trudy Carmody, as well. Trudy or Hannah, would you like to ask Monsignor John any questions?
I can't, Trudy, here. I can't. I don't have a question because I can't disagree with a single word you said. I don't have as big a family as John, but there's 4 of us, plus husbands or wives make 8, plus children, and between us, we have 10. That's not a big family. Now, you made the point of small church, big church, and that argument could be made individually if it was necessary, but most of the churches are big buildings.
Yes.
And I think to put it into the hands of the priest, the priest and family to decide on individual cases would make more sense. It's almost like you're not being trusted, and if it was down to immediate family, that's a discussion to have. And, people are heartbroken and they haven't seen the person, if it's a COVID-related death, while they weren't well in hospital. It's a horrible time for a family, and you get through these times, and we particularly as Irish people get through it together. And it's not about, you could even take on, I don't mean to be flippant, but it's not even about celebrating the person's life, because you could do that in a little while. It's about supporting each other on that day and in that moment.
Yes.
The celebrating their life could come later. But yeah, I think I can't argue. I don't even have a question. I couldn't come up with the question I couldn't even do devil's advocate with you. I can't justify 10 versus 25. I really think it should be left with the church and to be given the responsibility to the priest and the family and decide on individual cases.
Yeah.
You're bringing up an interesting point there.
Sorry, Monsignor, yes.
Actually, like who is supposed to decide? I mean, I look at the funeral director and I say, well, I'm not going to be counting. I don't think it's my responsibility, but ultimately it possibly is, because I am in charge of the building, if you like. So maybe ultimately it is. I would be trying to pass the book, but
absolutely.
And certainly I would be trying to keep the decision away from the family, the grieving family. And we have a great tradition in Ireland, and we have built up ways of dealing with bereavement that's maybe healthier than a lot of societies.
For sure.
Like we do face it full on. We tend to have wakes where we gather around the deceased. We tell stories. We reminisce. We joke.
Funeral is one of the best parties you can go to when it's appropriate, not if it's a young or a sick person, but to celebrate that life, it's great.
Yeah, in a parish I was in one time in Kildare town, actually, an American man came to manage a factory there, And the factory was the wallpaper factory, and that great old family feeling among the 100 workers or whatever. And funerals were a big thing, and the factory would sort of close down. He couldn't get his head around this. But he was a very good guy, like, and he would start attending, and he just was blown away. And I remember having this conversation with him at the end of a wake. So both of us were in liberal talking mood. And he was just telling me he was blown away. First of all, he thought this was the craziest place he ever was in. It was bizarre. But he began to realize that this was very healthy in comparison to what he had experienced, where the corpse disappears for 10 days or a fortnight.
Yeah.
Then you have this memorial service with invited guests, you know. So it was the first time I came to appreciate that, look, at the rituals we had developed were good human rituals that helped the people who were grieving. And I've always held on to that belief. And suddenly all of that has disappeared. And on top of all of that disappearing, not being able to have this healthy wake and all the stories, on top of that, you have this unbelievable decision that somebody has to make, that half of his brothers and sisters can't come in here, you know.
I never thought, you started off there, and who makes the decision? I never thought of the funeral director. And yeah, you're right to keep it away from particularly a grieving widow, if it's or widower. But like, who would make the decision? And that's, you know, that's tough. That really is tough.
Maybe something that crosses my mind: who is criminally responsible if the regulations are breached?
Well, that would have to come to your mind. I never, because you're the person, and like you said, it's you that's in the house, so metaphorically. So, and at the same time, I can understand why you wouldn't want the book to stop with you. And the funeral director also would have that, and maybe then it falls to the family, not obviously the widow or widower, but maybe it does fall to the family, and to have a chat.
Yes.
And discuss what's appropriate based on family, immediate family size, church size, all of that. But a discussion, because it really is. It's a phenomenal thing that we do, and it is a huge part of the healing process. And it's making it so difficult for the families involved. It really is.
Yes. And now, speaking of that tradition, we have, as you quite rightly mentioned, Monsignor, we have a wonderful tradition of grieving. We had always a very healthy attitude to death, I always felt, compared to other countries. You're quite right on that. And that tradition of celebrating in a nice way, in an appropriate way, the death of a loved one, the death of someone near and dear. That tradition has spawned over many centuries, and this is the perfect juncture to talk to Dr. We're very happy and very pleased to have Dr. Tom Nelligan in the studio this evening virtually, historian and now at this stage, arguably an expert on Laois archaeology, Laois monastic sites. Dr. Tom, is there a reason why we've built up this amazing reservoir of rituals surrounding death and surrounding funerals? And has that gone back centuries? Has it gone back to the start of Christianity in Ireland? Are there reasons for this?
Well, I think it goes beyond the beginnings of Christianity in Ireland. You go back to some of the earliest historical sites that we have in Ireland. If you go back to, we were talking before we went on air about Lough Crew and Newgrange and places like that. I mean, they're all to do with death and burial. So it's always been there. And then when Christianity came on, obviously this continued. And I think it's part of human nature, because it's something that's inevitable, and how you deal with that can shape your life in one way or another.
Yeah, because it just seems so central to Irish life. It's only when you live abroad Look, I was happy. Luckily enough, I was able to live abroad in different countries when I was younger, but they don't have it. What we have, the Irish funeral is unique, isn't it?
It is a unique thing, yeah. Now I lived in England for many years, but I'm from a sort of an Irish Catholic family, so even there we would have experienced the same thing that you would have had here. So my experiences are very much limited to the Irish way of doing things.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Hannah, would you like to jump in? Have you any questions from a senior John or Tom?
I kept getting cut in and out there. I was going to contribute, but my audio would go, my camera would go, so it's just my wife. I have to apologise for that.
No, but it's good. It's actually it shows the viewers that yes, broadband in Rathdowney is still a problem in 2021. Government deal with it.
Really is, yeah. Especially online college classes, it's a nightmare, honestly. But I do have a few questions. I'm going to ask Monsignor first, if that's okay. So we're talking about, the traditions that would run with the Irish people, and especially how COVID has impacted the church.
Yes.
Now, not just in relation to, say, funerals and stuff. There's kind of a tradition. It's bred in us. When you walk into a church, you put your hand into the holy water font, and you go on and you find your seat, probably crowded in with a clatter of your neighbours and stuff, right? When do you think that? Now, realistically, when do you think we'll be able to sit next to people close in a church or have a chat in the church courtyard? When do you think that might happen again?
Well, yeah, when will it happen again? I mean, I would love to think that it will happen in 2021. I'm hopeful that we will be able to have restricted ceremonies sometime around the middle of the year. I'm not hopeful for Patrick's Day. I'm not hopeful for Easter, which is the 4th of April. I'd love to be proved wrong about this, but just trying to read the signs of the times and trying to read the advancement of the virus and the rollout of the vaccine. I'd love to think that we can celebrate confirmations and communions in the month of June. Albeit I would be accepting that this will be in some type of restricted form. But perhaps by October, when we have a serious percentage of our population with vaccine taken and the virus under control, that we might be able to walk into a pub and put our arms around someone's shoulder and just normal things, going to a football match and roar and cheer and shout and give out to the ref. October.
Yeah, October, hopefully. In relation to, I think we've all kind of noticed now with COVID, things are petri dishes that you'd never have considered a petri dish, whether it's bringing in your bins or something, or door handles and shops. We've all kind of become way more aware of the bacteria that may be on it. Do you think COVID and all of these regulations will have an impact on how, say, communion's delivered or anything like that in the future?
We'll probably go back to what we knew as normal. But I think for a lot of people, this will be with them. And I think maybe the senior citizens more than the young people. Youth has a great resilience. Youth is able to bounce back. And you even see that, say, in terms of young people who lose family members, they're able to get over it quicker than more senior people. But I do think a lot of our senior citizens, of which I have to count myself one, that this virus and the experience of this virus will remain, a residue of it will remain with us, at the same time, please God, life will go on. This will be like the great flu of the 1918, 1919, and plagues in the past. And Dr. Tom will be far better on this, but like the world was used to being locked down through plague and virus, and it had far more detrimental effect than ours have. But what is normal, I suppose. But I think this will shape our future, shape the future of a lot of people. in terms of, I think some people will have lost their confidence to come back to Mass. You know, people who were there regularly, people have got used now, a lot of people have got used to connecting online. And I think that won't cease when the virus is a distant memory. I think that's a new feature of how people will interact with church and with worship.
Have you been doing any online masses, Father?
Sorry?
I said, have you been doing any online masses yourself over the course?
We have an online mass every day from the parish church, which has a very considerable number of viewers, and from all over the world, because there's a group in Portlaoise called Shalom World TV. Shalom World, basically founded by and staffed here by people of Indian descent from Kerala in India, which is a very Catholic part of India. And Shalom World are transmitting our Mass every day. So we celebrate Mass at 10 o'clock a.m. and it goes out on our webcam and parish radio and Facebook Live. And that has quite a number of people who watch in. And Shalom World transmit that at that time. But at 10 a.m. New York time, Shalom World transmit our 10 a.m. Mass. And around now in Los Angeles, Shalom World are transmitting our Mass. And we have had reaction from all of that. The front of our link up this week, our weekly newsletter, has a lady from New York State. An article was published in a paper in New York State about this lady who looks in at Mass every day from Portlaoise in Ireland. And she sent us the article, so we've reproduced the article in our link up, and it can be accessed on our website. And it might be an interesting thing for Laois today to just look into, that the numbers are quite phenomenal, and the number of requests we're getting from all over the world for prayers and to mention at Mass different people. It is amazing. A whole new world has opened up. We have lost maybe a lot of our actual congregation, but we have gained this virtual congregation.
Did you see the pandemic has turned more people to religion, say particularly to your church, more people tuning in even?
I don't know. I wouldn't have any sort of statistics to back that up, except I do know that a lot of our parishioners have stayed in touch with us via radio and webcam. And the webcam is particularly valued around funerals, which we have mentioned already, you know, in that people are able to at least be present in that virtual way. And has it turned people more to religion? I think it has made everybody sort of stop and say, well, you know, we thought life just went on and everything was going great. All the worries we had this time last year, we had a general election coming up. We were giving out yards about all sorts of things. And suddenly the virus just brought us to a big full stop. And many of those issues have faded into the background. And so maybe it has made us think more about what's important. I would like to think that it has.
Mortality a bit more and noticed what's going on around us, I think.
I was making that point to someone recently, and he actually sort of brought me up a bit short in that he said, listen, after the great flu came the 20s, and the 20s was a decade of decadence. So he was predicting that after this there'll be a great decade of decadence, that we will party for 10 years, maybe.
Hopefully so.
Hopefully so. Monsignor, you're predicting the party to end all parties.
Well, I'm just passing on. I'm passing on the wisdom of a man I was speaking to.
Very good. Very
good. I'll bring the kegs. Tom, I wanted to ask you, what do you think? How is this past year? How is that going to impact us in the years to come? Do you think there'll be a massive change, kind of deep down in the way we go about our daily lives, even?
There probably will. I mean, I was just talking to a friend the other day that it was only just over a year ago that we went to a gig in a small club in Dublin. People crowded in. The thought of that now fills me with dread. So I think we'll have a lasting impact. Maybe some of the things that have developed through social distancing might actually stick on a little bit afterwards. I hope that it is the party to end all parties, as you just said a minute ago. But we'll wait and see. I just hope that we can return to some form of normality, and maybe some of the changes that will come out of this will be good.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Tom, before we came on air, you were telling me, you were obviously telling me about your website, thelongstone.ie, and standingstone.ie, and the 1,000 historic sites, monastic sites in Laois. I mean, wherever you go in the county within the 5 kilometers, there's something to see, isn't there?
There's going to be something, whether it's just a little mound or a little stone sticking out of the ground. There definitely will be something there. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I watched a wonderful video you did of the old Kyle monastic site.
Yes.
Right on the border with Tipperary there.
Yes.
And you mentioned something I didn't know about. You mentioned the Slí Dála. And maybe our viewers haven't heard about this. So we talk about the M7 now. We think we're great. We have our motorway. But back 1,500 years ago, Laois had a monastic motorway.
Yes, no, I think that's a good way of putting it, like a monastic M7. Certainly, it was the main routeway from Munster all the way through towards the east, I suppose towards Tara, one of the main ancient roadways. And as Christianity came into Ireland, these monasteries, it was quite common for them to be established on these main routeways to accommodate pilgrims and things like that. So Rosscray, which of course has its round tower not too far away from where I am in Boris Ossory, would have been on it. We have Agabo Abbey not too far away, would have been close by, and also Old Kyle Cemetery. So you really would have, I suppose they were like the medieval motorway services, so to speak. You could stop off at these monasteries onto wherever you were traveling to.
Yes, and it's a possible silver lining with this pandemic that we'll actually discover what's on our doorstep more and more.
Well, I think that's definitely been happening. There's been certainly on social media this Know Your 5K to get out there and know what's around you. And there are great online resources that you can access now to find out what is close by. If you go onto archaeology.ie, they have their historical monument viewer, and you can find everything that's around. Anything that's a listed monument around the country, you can go and see what it is, where it is, and find out more about it.
Wonderful. Ladies, have you any questions for Dr. Tom?
I was just going to say, I think it's ironic you say what's on your doorstep when you're referencing that, because my housing estate is actually built on it. So it is.
Okay.
So literally, we found that out about 2 years ago. It's actually, we're actually on the original kind of route.
Okay.
On the Slí Dála, Hannah.
Well, that's what my granddad was doing a bit of research in the men's shed, and he found it out for us that there's a little bit of the route that my housing estate, and they were excavating the estate. It's about 15 years old, and there were a few battles like ambushes after the Battle of the Plumes and all this kind of stuff on this exact estate. And when they were digging up the foundations and stuff to build it, they found a massive sword and all of this kind of crack like here. So I was going,
history now. So.
Yeah, a bit of a history project now for me in this new quarantine.
Yeah, it's great to see. So loads of history down at home, Hannah. And we need to beef up the broadband down there.
I asked Dr. Tom a question. Could I ask a question?
Monsignor, work away.
Tom, somebody told me the ridge. We have the ridge here in Portlaoise. That actually is a remnant of a road to Clonmacnoise. That there was a highway that way as well, if you like.
I think it's actually built on a natural geographical feature. It's an old esker.
Yes, the esker, yeah.
Yeah, anyone who remembers their junior cert geography knows what an esker is. And they used it as a routeway. It stretches all the way up to Clonmacnoise. I think it terminates at what's known as the Nuns' Church.
Yes, yeah. And just one more question for Tom. What's the oldest site in heritage site in County Laois, would you say?
We
Wow,
were
good
talking
question.
about this before we came on air.
You were. And I don't have a definitive answer for you, because part of the issue would be is not all of these sites have been dated, and there's not records for a lot of them, so we don't have a definitive answer. But there are sites going back into the Neolithic period, so we could say there's about 6,000 years of history that we can still see on the landscape today. So there are a few megalithic sites dotted around the county. There's one actually very close to me known as Skirk. There's a henge with a standing stone there, probably from the late Neolithic period. So we could say maybe 5,000 to 6,000 years.
Wow, yeah. A lot of these questions won't be decided until the pubs are reopened.
Yes, we can solve them all.
This is
When
it.
that party starts, Monsignor, that you're talking about.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I'm not promoting that now, by the way.
Oh, no.
You're just
Promoting
you're just
a
looking.
decade of
Yeah, you're just looking for an invite. You just want the invite.
virtue.
Yeah.
The minute it's safe, we'll all be knocking on your front door.
This is it. This is it. Yeah, it'll be wonderful. We'll be back to bragging rights. It'll not only be about football and hurling titles, but about who has the oldest monastic site in their parish.
Exactly.
It'll be great. And Monsignor, when we come out of this pandemic, like, do you have any plans to travel?
I surely have. I'm looking forward to the vaccine, and as soon as I can, I definitely would like to travel again. Yeah, I mean, every year I would have been abroad somewhere, and I'm looking forward to having the freedom to do that again. But I think it has given me an appreciation, a greater appreciation of what we have on our doorstep too, and indeed that the country we have and the wonderful possibilities of recreating locally as well. But I definitely would look forward to the day when I can use my passport again.
Yes. Yeah,
it's to be given the choice, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
It's when the choice is taken away from you.
Yes,
Do you know what? A day out, well, obviously a day back to Dublin would be lovely here, but even to go to Tipperary or Kildare or Kilkenny, you know, just the choice.
Yes, yes.
Or Carlo, Monsignor.
You have to.
I'm a bit disappointed I didn't mention Carlo, yeah.
Yes, yes. But you could always say you were going to the office.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Tom, have you any travel plans after this madness is over?
I'd love to be able to travel 6 or 7 kilometers. That'll be a good start. I have family in the UK. My wife is from Spain. She has a family. Of course, we haven't been able to see any of them, so they'll probably be high up on the list when it's possible to do so. Sooner rather than later.
Touch wood, fingers crossed. Yeah, sooner rather than later. It's been tough for everyone. Now, ladies, any more questions for the men here? Well, we have them.
Them enough anyway.
And we'll, as well as the rollout of the vaccine, we'll be rooting for the rollout of broadband to Rathdowney.
Yeah, please.
Yes,
please.
Yeah.
And we were only talking about that last week, Monsignor, because the National Broadband of Ireland is in Stradbally at the moment. And if you go on their website and put in your postcode, then it'll bring up whether you're on the list, your premises is on the list to be upgraded to the fibre of that national rural broadband, I think it's called.
Yeah.
So they're doing Laois at the moment. So within the next 2 years, we should all technically be done.
Yeah,
Very good.
The lockdown has really shown us the difference between people who have good broadband and people who haven't. You know, it's third world versus first world in our own country, isn't it?
It's absolutely essential.
My lectures as well, when I'm sitting there pixelated completely, not able to hear a word.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
And when you look at what you can do, I have to say, what you're doing and where the mass is going, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And you know, I'd say a saving grace for a lot of people that this pandemic has happened when that's a possibility.
Exactly. It had happened before. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been possible. And Monsignor, while I have you, I mean, This is a genuine question. Are priests considered frontline workers? Surely you must be.
Well, if we're chaplains to the hospitals, we are.
Yes.
And in Portlaoise, we're chaplains to the Midlands Regional Hospital and to St. Quintin's. So we are considered frontline in that regard.
Very good. Thanks, Monsignor. Thanks,
So
Monsignor.
you should be getting the vaccine shortly then.
Yes, I am scheduled to get the vaccine shortly.
Great.
Fantastic.
Great news.
And will be up first when to get it. I'm not I'm not one of the vaccineers objectors in that extensive word.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful breakthrough. I mean, the science. I've had time on my hands and I've checked in and checked out the science of the vaccines that are now available. It's incredible. It's incredible the science that went behind it.
And in such a short time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we have to be thankful for the efforts of all the doctors and scientists who've made that possible as well. So it's great to see, like, for example, last weekend the GPs and their staff getting vaccinated there in the Collection Hotel here in Portlaoise. It's the first sign, as I mentioned in the video, the first sign of a little bit of normality coming back.
Yes.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see it.
Right at the end of this long tunnel.
Yes, absolutely. So, and Dr. Tom, thanks for coming in this evening. Senior, thanks for taking time out of your schedule to chat to us this evening. Really do appreciate it. To our viewers, I hope you enjoyed the program this evening. And if you have any suggestions for future programs, if you want to hear about other subjects, let us know what you want to watch and listen to. If you want to come on the show, feel free. You can DM us, PM us, and we were talking to Dr. Tom about this. You're upgrading your website.
We're trying to, yes.
Yeah, well, you have a Facebook page, you're on Instagram,
Facebook page,
Twitter.
we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. We're trying to put up regular posts the whole time. So stop by to any of those social media platforms, and there's new content going up regularly.
Yeah, and we have all the links to for Portlaoise Parish as well on the screen now. Yep. So you can. There's a virtual community out there. If you're especially if you're living alone, and I know it's a tough time, especially for people on their own. Reach out. There's a virtual community there. There are people that you can get in touch with. We have all that information on the screen there now. Don't feel you're on your own. Reach out. There's help there. There's a community out there willing to help. Only too happy to help you. And to our wonderful ladies, to Trudy and to Hannah, thanks for calling in this evening. Hannah, so hopefully the Wi-Fi and the broadband will get sorted soon in Rathdowney.
Hopefully so. Yeah.
Hopefully so.
Thanks very much for having me.
And Trudy, how's the shoulder now? Before we go,
guys, I had a bit of an accident this morning, and I've twisted my right shoulder, and it's sore to my elbow, and I can't really move the right hand side from my neck down to my fingers.
I tell you what, Trudy, no, it's not nice, and you have to mind yourself. I twisted and then
bounced off the shoulder, and then in fright, I reacted and then bounced back down a second time. So no, it's not good.
Not good, but you're an absolute trooper. We didn't expect you in this evening. So you're an absolute trooper.
Well, I'm A&E now in a moment. I'm going to go into A&E.
Yeah, do get it checked out, Trudy. Yeah. And to our wonderful guests, thanks for coming on the show, and hopefully we'll have you on again. And to our wonderful viewers, have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you next Saturday at 9 o'clock. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.
Thanks for the invitation.